Now, right. Today I promised you we're going to make it more personal and there won't be so much theory as usual. I still have some theory because I thought, okay, at least we need to remind ourselves what this is all about. And then let's jump to charts straight away, shall we? And the idea for today was to use our own charts to give an example of a ruling planet of the chart. So normally what we understand by this is the sign, the planet that's ruling the sign on the ascendant. Now, I'm not sure I personally 100% agree with this because there are so many different patterns in charts, as you know. Some charts have something around the other angles, not the ascendant necessarily, especially when it's the MC, that turns out to be more prominent and more visible. Maybe the exception is really when the MC is involved. But let's stick to the traditional way of thinking here so that we don't get too confused. And we'll look at the ascendants. I hope you don't mind sharing your charts. I've got everybody's charts prepared today. So we can open them quickly. And if you want, you can spend each one of you or whoever wants. I mean, if you don't want to do that, don't feel obliged. But just to comment a little bit about how you feel about your own ascendant sign and maybe looking into where the planet ruling the ascendant is located in the chart as well and what kinds of aspects it makes and really how it's playing in the context of the whole picture. Then you can say how you feel this in your own personal self-expression or I don't know, whatever else you may connect with it. Okay? Does that sound like a good plan for today? All right. I wanted to share just a few things, 3 or 4 slides, just to remind ourselves about the traditional concept of rulership in astrology, and to mention what is controversial about it. And then you can express your views when you comment your chart or whenever about whether most importantly, I believe, is whether we can include the most recent 3 planets that have been discovered, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, in the rulership concept, and whether we should assign any signs to them as they have already been assigned. But do you use this way of interpreting things, or do you stick to the traditional up to Saturn rulership for all the signs of the zodiac? My personal approach is a mixture between the two. I use traditional rulers, but I use modern rulers as well. The rule of thumb for me is to not disregard the traditional ones because they work. They have been, I mean, there is a very stable logic behind why they have been connected to these particular signs. But I can see that there is a lot of additional meaning that we can now get from Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto for the signs Scorpio, Aquarius, and Pisces. That's also quite relevant. So I suggest we don't really try to find any truth here, but experiment, observe, see how it's working with us personally. And we'll see. I mean, of course, everybody's free to do what you want in your own practice. Now, the things that I wanted to share, just very quickly, I think that would be just handy to take a look at while we're speaking, while somebody is speaking. I got this quote shared in the group yesterday by Stephen Forrest. He's saying in his book, The Inner Sky, rulership, the word is unfortunate, he says. It is really not a question of dominance or submission. This is just medieval thinking. It would be more accurate to say that the planet and the sign like each other, but modern astrology has retained the medieval expression. So I know most of you know what we are talking about, that this connection that astrologers make between signs of the zodiac and the planets. A lot of confusion comes from this because this tempts us to equate them, isn't it? A little bit. To forget where is the boundary between the meaning of what a sign is in the chart and what a planet is in the chart. There's very different things, very different functions or meanings of things in the chart. So when we make this connection of rulership, and rulership is the broad word, because every sign is supposed to be ruled by one of the planets, but then we have these other categories of fall, detriment, and so on. I'm going to touch on them in a minute as well. But rulership is this affinity, really, in my view. Affinity of a kind of energy, a kind of function, which is, you know, let's say Mars, the Martian function, has an affinity better with some of the signs of the zodiac. It likes them more, it expresses itself better and in a more natural, direct way than in other signs of the zodiac. And that holds true with all of them equally. Now, here is where we can argue and we can discuss which one is more sympathetic to what. And it's a mixture, always, I think. It's not very pure connection there that we can find. Then this is just a quick reminder. I thought that was very handy because you see how we've got with the summer solstice on the two sides of the summer solstice. So Cancer and Leo have the sun and the moon as rulers, respectively. And then when we go in the two directions from them to the wheel, we've got Virgo and Gemini with Mercury. And Mercury is the first planet after the sun in the solar system. Then we've got Venus, and naturally the next two signs are the ones after Gemini and Virgo, Libra and Taurus, assigned to Venus. Then we switch to Mars, which is Scorpio and Aries, Jupiter, Pisces and Sagittarius, and then Saturn is given the other side. So it's like the two boundaries of the solar system, the Sun and Saturn. This is the, you know, the body of the traditional astrology. And there is, I mean, I'm sure we can all see the logic in that, and it makes sense. But there were other ways. Here, this is from Dane Woodier's article, Planetary Rulership and Planetary Octaves and Rulership. You can take a look at that if you want. He discusses the same pretty much, but with a bit of, you know, strange ideas there that I won't touch on now. If you're interested, you can go and read for yourself. But this is the same thing, but because it's drawn this way, we can see here that now he's got another a little further down, which I wanted to show you, of how every one of the signs is given that has dual rulership, that's got two planets connected to it. This one. So this is how we've got a male or let's say day or positive or active sign for each one, and then we've got a feminine one for each one, or a negative night one, which is kind of balancing things out as well on the two sides. So the sun and moon, this natural pair, the two lights, they've got Leo and Cancer, and Leo and Cancer come from two different qualities. And then Gemini and Virgo as well, and so on. Yeah, that's another easy way to remember what rules what. But here, so in this one, only traditional rulers, no Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. In the next one, absolutely the same, but we've got Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus accordingly. Yeah. And another one which I thought will be handy is this one. But here we've only got, no, this is modern rulership. So here every sign has a separate, apart from Taurus and, so Taurus Libra and Gemini Virgo. But we've got Pluto for Scorpio, Uranus for Aquarius, and Pisces for Neptune. Okay, and finally, this, sorry, I don't know if you see this well, so I make it bigger. So this is the whole table of dignities and debilities, how they call them. I don't like these words, I don't know about you. They sound too polarizing for my liking. But okay, that's the astrological language for now. And uh, I don't know what to say about this. My opinion is this is not very reliable as a concept. If we are very strict with it, we may get very retracted from the real meaning of what's the situation, let's say, in a consultation. But this is a very handy way to figure out and evaluate what weighs more in a chart than something else. So which those planets that happen to be in their signs of rulership or exaltation in the personal chart, you know, they are a little bit more active, prominent, and more of a chief character in the film than the rest of them. And they can dominate. I don't think this is the only factor. You know, factors like whether this is on the ascendant on one of the other angles, or all the aspects it makes and things like that are also to be counted in. But this is if we remember every sign in which, sorry, every planet in which sign it's, let's say, stronger and weaker in inverted commas, then we can figure out what weighs more in the chart as a factor. Yeah, I think that's probably the greatest advantage about it. So the logic here is, as you know, maybe most of you, this is quite easy to remember. That's what we need to start with, the rulership. So what is the chief energy related to every planet? The sun connected to Leo, for example, gives Leo the sign of rulership of that planet. But then Aries is the exaltation. Now, fall and rulership are always opposites. And that's another way to just have a shortcut there, to remember which one is in fall. And now this, I won't comment on that, just leaving the table here for you to see, because some of those I'm not really sure whether I agree with. And let's not have an argument about it, but this is how things are, you know, at the moment accepted to be. And yeah, it's, I thought we should maybe come back to that table if we forget about something, and remind ourselves what is what and where it's positioned on it.
Radilina, I've always wondered what's the difference between like exaltation, rulership, which one is higher, and what's the way between detriment and fall? What's the main difference?
Rulership is kind of at the top of the list of, let's say, relevance of planet to sign. That the fact that, for example, the moon rules Cancer, or Cancer rules the moon. I know exactly which one rules what, but they are connected together. Out of the 12 signs, Cancer is the one that's the most relevant when we speak about the moon, because the qualities of the sign and the qualities of the planet are pretty much overlapping. But then the exaltation is more of a strong point, so like a second best,
Okay.
which is also very comfortable energy for that planet, but it's not the most like comfortable. Then the fall is meant to be an opposition to the rulership. And I have read in several places that planets that are positioned in their fall in the birth chart, like for example, I've got Mars in Libra. So where is, no, I'm sorry, that's the detriment. So the detriment is the opposite. I'm sorry, I got it wrong earlier when I told you the fall is opposite to the rulership. It's the detriment that's opposite the rulership. Okay. Yeah, so it's rulership, detriment, exaltation, fall. That's the pairs that they make. So
detriment is more to watch out for.
The detriment, my personal view of this is that every sign of the zodiac is every planet could be strong and weak, easy or difficult in every one of the 12 signs. It's not just about rulership. Rulership, as Stephen Forrest says, is a bit of an outdated concept now, I believe, especially with psychology. Because with psychological astrology, we can see that things are a lot more specific. So every energy could be applied in its proper way. So Mars in Libra, for example, my Mars in Libra, is supposed to be in a very weak position, because it's in that sign, detriment sign, opposite to the ruler of Mars. So it's supposed to be feeling strange, feeling awkward in Libra, because the combative, aggressive, assertive energy of Mars, that's the function of it, that's the role of it, is just not knowing how to do its, how to play its part comfortably through the prism of Libra. But I still think that there is a way, there is a formula. We just need to be a bit more creative about it and imagine the right kind of situation in the right kind of way to express Martian energy through Libra. So, but yeah, at the same time, I can't say that it's as strong as Aries. Aries can be strong in position of Mars, but it could also be a dangerous one. It could be an too explosive one, uncontrolled or over dominating. So I think we should be careful when we give this evaluation of positive and negative. Try to escape from that if possible, and try to read them all through every single energy. That's why I do use rulerships. I do use dignitaries and divinities a lot. I always have them at the back of my mind, but I never allow them to over influence my interpretation, because I can say to someone, oh, your Venus in Scorpio is going to be problematic, for example, but maybe it won't be. Maybe they are doing a very good job with their Venus in Scorpio, better than another person with their Taurus one or their Libra one, if you see what I mean. Yeah.
Got it.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Intuitively, I'm look. So it's not validated theory, but that's my take on it. And I look at the sun, for example, rulership, exaltation, and so on, and it makes me think that the sun rules a sign which is midsummer, is exalted in spring, in detriment in midwinter, and in fall.
Yes.
So I translate with each season, and I say the rulership is the midsummer of the planet, the fall is the autumn of the planet, and the detriment is the winter of the planet. And of course,
That's a very nice way to put it, John Mark. Thank you.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah.
You should write an article about this, because if you haven't already, because that's a very original idea, and I think it's such a good
And
one.
very easy to understand. Yes.
yeah, at least.
Yeah, makes sense. So if we look at it through the seasons, then we see that in every season there is something to be happening. It's just like in the winter, it may be a bit more hidden and a bit more difficult to. It's not its business to be very active outside in the world. It's more internalized, maybe. So
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe we can discover, following your logic, Jean-Marc, that this thing about the retrogrades that we discussed earlier. Maybe if a planet is in detrimental fall in the chart, it can act a little bit like a retrograde planet, or at least it can look like it. Yeah.
Yeah, so we are going to be confused between what is retrograde and what is detriment.
Well, I think the danger in all this is to be too dogmatic about these concepts. Let's not forget that these are ancient astrology concepts, and as far as they are based on a lot of observation and experience and so on, and tradition, which I respect very much. But today astrology is quite different in terms of what it's meant to achieve as a help to people. So I don't think we should be very dogmatic about them.
I wanted to just say that I don't know if Stephen is on this call.
Yes.
He sent me something last evening that I just thought was fantastic. And it felt much more, I don't know, not so medieval, but well, because it came also from his Vedic practices of it. So he sent me a chart that was very interesting, and I know he has to leave at 10. So might there be a time where, we could he could put up that chart for us as well. It's an interesting way of looking at signs and rulerships.
So
if
Stephen,
you felt like it.
Stephen, are you up for that? Do you want to show us what Lauren just mentioned about?
Well, yes. Well, thank you. What I was sharing with Lauren, because the scheduled theme as far as the rulerships, and so what I was wanting to share with her was relating to the exoteric or mundane rulerships, which of course you were referring to right now with this idea of the rulerships, exaltation, instruments, and fall as being again a medieval kind of perspective. And look at esoteric rulerships and hierarchical rulerships. And this has to do with, again, a numinosity of astrology itself, and talking about astrology in its tradition, having its own primitive aspects, but primitive just means primal, meaning like it's first gear on this car. But are we still driving the car in first gear when we have freeways, when we can go 70, 80 miles an hour? So the idea of taking this idea in a rulership of a purely exoteric point of view, but that there's some esoteric implications. And what I was wanting to share with Lauren is that the idea of the moon. You say, well, the moon isn't a planet anyway. So what does the moon represent? And in the esoteric point of view, that the moon actually ends up being a veil for the other planets, which are the gas planets, Uranus and Neptune. But it's a differential on how it affects and effects the personality of the individual based upon their own spiritual maturity. And the other part of it is that we have stellar influences, and this idea of it's an electrical grid. We have power grids, but power is transduced through transformers, and it comes into the house. So there's always a transduction of cosmic energy into force and power. And in this particular regard, we have the mythologies related to Sirius, the dog star. We have the mythologies related to the 7 planets of Ursa Major. When we have mythologies related to the attributed 7 stars of Pleiades. So this idea of an esoteric, again, influence, to avoid the sense of rulership, has a lot to do with more of what you were referring to earlier, Redlina, is an inner stimulation and an inner growth of an individual. And let's say for us, collectively speaking, providing astrological services to people, say when we first start introducing the people, we obviously have to start with the first gear. So, we take the esoteric planetary rulerships based upon tradition, like language, common language. But then once you start working with an individual, or the idea is, well, what's underneath the covers? What's under Inanna's veil? Because Inanna in this descent into hell, 7 layers of clothing. These represented sheaths. These represented part of our body manifestation. Now, for most people, I guess a little bit more here. For most people, they say, well, we just have a physical body. That's all we can see, so that's all we need to work with. Says, well, wait a second. If we are actually a biofield of electromagnetic energy, our whole nervous system is based on electricity, and wherever electricity flows, there's a magnetic field. And that, as far as fractal recursivity, it's reflected in a planetary alignment. So the point I would like to share is that in one particular view, you take the chakras, you say, okay, 7 to 7. But it's even more practical. Say, okay, we have a physical body. We can touch and feel that. We also have a vital body. And the vital body is what we do when we go to the hospital. The nurse, the CNA, the collector says, oh, I need to check your vital signs. Well, respiration, heartbeat, temperature, blood pressure, those are considered part of the vital body. But then we have the subtle body, and the subtle body is going to be referring to those organs that we just can't see, that represent consolidations of energy fields, which are commonly referred to as the chakras. And then once we deal with the subtle body, well, then there's the etheric body. So now we have our kind of orbic auric field. That's kind of our little bubble protoplasm as we coexist with these other types of influences. And then, of course, we have our astral body, mental body, and now we're working with, on the spiritual plane relating to alchemic plane of consciousness following the Vedantic model. Now, why I feel this is important is not necessarily for the people we provide services for, but for ourselves. For ourselves. So we can have a better understanding of our own growth as, again, we share with other people the empathy of how it is to be human, trying to struggle along on the planet and have the right directions of how we want to feel our sense of self-development. Because again, like taking this simple chart that you have read, Lena, say the sun is in rulership of Leo, but it's in the detriment of Aquarius. So that means anyone that's got a sun sign in Aquarius to say, oh man, that's too bad you got an Aquarius sun sign. It's in the detriment, you know. So then the old person gets wilts and go, oh gosh, but I'm cursed by my own birth. I have a detrimental sun sign. Well, that doesn't make any sense at all. How is that supportive of an individual's sense of inspiration to grow and move beyond themselves? So this idea of the esoteric rulerships, as there are associations, affiliations of the planet, has a lot to do with this expansion beyond the visual field, meaning the visual field stops at Saturn. The visual field stops in the physical body. Say, well, you know, I can't see infrared, I can't see ultraviolets, so it must not exist. I can see those 7 colors, and that's the real world because that's me. Well, that has such a solipsistic viewpoint. But what we want to do, getting back to this Aquarian thing, is be able to expand a person beyond the defined boundaries of their own cultural conditioning. And that is the idea then of this personal growth. So that was what I wanted to kind of share with Lauren, the idea of these esoteric implications of sign rulerships. Like, for example, what you were referring to, Radlina, is that, okay, so here's Pluto, you know, it's always been there, but it was discovered in 1930. And then all of a sudden we have Eris, and then we have Sedna, and we have these other planetary objects that are way outside the, you know, the astronomical units. You say, well, how are those going to really influence the individual? They don't, but they allow a person to identify the symbolization of what those represent in terms of a larger connectiveness to cosmic proportions. And this again goes to the stellar influences of Ursa Major, the Pleiades, and Sirius. And now a lot of astrology programs will include the stars. You can put the stars in as secondary, but in terms of dealing with people, and then we have all this stuff in the chart, and it's just like confetti on a paper with glue. But first gear, exoteric. Second gear, esoteric, and then hierarchical, third gear. So we have this kind of progression. But my feeling, as far as being sharing, is that for us collectively doing astrology, is to have this kind of sense that there's more behind the curtain. Again, the Wizard of Oz, you know, the man behind the curtain. There's something behind the manifestation that really, really allows us to, again, develop our sense of self-development. So that's what I again wanted to share with that.
Stephen, thank you. In light of what you just said, what do you think? Maybe I can ask you one more question if you don't mind. In light of everything that you just said, what do you think of this notion by Rudyard that exactly because Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are somehow different from everything else that's going on between the Sun and Saturn, as this exoteric body that you, how did you call it? The first level, the first gear, it's supposed to be up to Saturn, isn't it? That's the boundary, that's the body, the skeleton of the system.
Correct. And that's why in the esoteric tradition, Saturn is referred to as the dweller on the threshold or the angel of the presence. And in one particular regard, from a mundane or exoteric point of view, you say, well, that's the idea of Saturn is restrictions and rules and limitations. But part of that is for us being able, again, the physical body, you know, Capricorn and skin and things like that, bone, it's that it allows the individual to complete the tests of soul and spirit that were initiated in Scorpio. So that Saturn rulership and again with the midheaven, with the sign of Capricorn, is a part of that delineation. It's like, well, all right, you know, we go through these silly rituals of, like with children, oh, they graduated from kindergarten. Oh, okay, right, we go through this ceremony. Oh, now they graduated from the 8th grade. Okay, we do another ceremony. Oh, now we graduated from high school. Okay, another ceremony. Now we graduated from college. But all those levels of graduation, it's like, well,
But that's also the
It's
Saturn.
relative to the individual and their own self-development. But the idea of once I want to grow beyond myself, there are certain things about myself I have to have an honest acknowledgement that was bullshit. And say, Stephen, you lived but that idea was really wrong. It was really misplaced. And you have to readjust your attitude and your perspective. Otherwise, you will limit yourself. I'll internalize that and say, okay, fine. So I have to let some of that go. But that's the idea of humility. There's a spiritual humility involved. And unless an individual, unless and when, as if in proposition, acknowledges an inner humility in their own development, they will be crushed by humiliation. And this is where Saturn rules Capricorn. Capricorn rules the knees. Why do we genuflect? Why do we get on our knees when we bow? It's the idea of demonstrating in physical form a sense of humility. And if we don't internalize a sense of humility, life will come and break our knees and cripple us for it and say, man, I gave you some advice and you didn't want to listen, but I got to force you to the stop. You're driving under the influence of your own inflated ego. I'm pulling you over. Here's a ticket for your DUI. Driving under the influence of an inflated ego.
So life comes and crushes us, or is it Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto consecutively come and crush us if we don't learn the lesson of going beyond the conditioning of Saturn? And do you think
they're the gas giants? So it's like the same thing. A kid in high school says, "Oh yeah, I'm a really smart guy. I can take that college course. Oh, I can do that. Just because I'm 13 years old, I can do that college course."
Mhm.
But the idea is that unless an individual is truly prepared, is truly developed, and more than just a conversational level, this is where it falls apart. You say, yes, okay, Saturn is a gas giant as well, but it's close enough for us to see.
But it's not only that. What I was trying to get to was that Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, they're not just, let's say, more distant or made up of something different. They are altogether different, because when we finish up to Saturn, the body of the solar system, the physical body of the solar system, then these three are referred by Dane Woodyer as the aura of the solar system. So almost like we have a body, the body finishes to Saturn, but this outside energetic field around the body is what is governed by these three, and they are not belonging to the same internal closed circuit system. And they in this respect, we cannot just easily grab them and assign them to signs of the zodiac, because they are more of a boundary between our solar system and what's beyond, the cosmos, isn't it? And they are energies bringing things in from there into the solar boundary.
The satellites are indicating that the magnetosphere of the sun extends much farther than Pluto.
Oh yeah, I have no doubt about that. And this is a totally bigger topic. Maybe they'll discover more and more later. But the fact that whatever goes on after Saturn is of a different kind.
I would agree, yes. Yeah, I agree very much. And so this is why the Hellenistic astrologers say, oh, well, that's why we can't even deal with Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, because they're so different. It doesn't fit into our mathematical dogmatisms.
Yes, and we really see this with rulership. Now, we can assign to Scorpio, Aquarius, and Neptune the three planets, and they fit quite well because we can see a lot in common. But the moment we start thinking about exaltation, detriment, and fall for the three planets, we see that some of the answers, if we follow that logic of the table, don't make sense at all.
I agree with you 100%. And that's why this is a medieval model. And I really don't follow it very, very much at all in terms of, let's say, conversational curiosities. But the idea of what you were pointing out, rulership versus detriment, you say, oh, the opposite sign. Well, even that as a linguistic expression really then deludes the person who's the astrologer, because wait a second, there is no opposite. It's a yin and yang thing. It's a head and tails. And when we use the word head and tails, where does that cliche comes from? From the early minting of money, where the head of the coin had the king's face. Mm-hmm. And whatever was on the backside was some kind of design. So the head of the coin was always more important because it had the face of the king. So we say, oh, heads or tails. Well, the head is good and the tail is bad. But meaning that it's the opposite. Say, no. There's only 6 signs, and they represent polarities, not oppositions.
6 axes, yes, but still we cannot doubt that Mars feels more natural in Aries than in Libra. But then maybe what I would do, like following what you said, is rather than put Libra in the case of Mars, for example, Libra as the most like down at the bottom of the table, I would put it second after Aries. So exactly because of the polarity, and Libra may be something acting with style completely opposite to, at least apparently, to Aries, but it's underneath motivated by Aries because it's as you said, Stephen, it's the other side of the same axis. So
well,
maybe
these Hellenistic and medieval astrologers, they didn't know about yin and yang. It wasn't even there. So the idea is like, okay, I'll agree, yes. Mars in Aries is very yang, very initiatory, very active, but say, well, Mars in Libra is very yin, and it has just as much potency within Libra, but it's not as obvious. And in that particular regard, not being obvious allows a person to diversify their energy without having to be in conflict. This whole idea of being heroic is like, well, how many sword fights, before I said, no. I want to work diplomatically. And this is what Libra is about, is the idea of the diplomacy. So the potency of Mars and Libra isn't so obvious, but it can be much more pervasive than some stand-up politician who talks a lot.
you talk about Capricorn, for example, exalted in, so Mars exalted in Capricorn. Well, you see, here is where everybody can have their own feeling about what's stronger than the other. But maybe the more we think within Saturnian cultural, traditional conditioning of how we are used to, run our lives on an everyday basis, as you touched a lot on this, Stephen, then we would agree more with the table. But if we go beyond this, and if we think a little bit more creatively, that's when the table starts showing some discrepancies there. Yeah?
I just have a question for Stephen because I know he's not going to be here. He mentioned in this chart, you had the exoteric, the esoteric, and the hierarchical. Yes. And I wanted you to just talk a little bit about that third, what it means to call something hierarchical or monad.
Okay, so the idea is that we can get into this body, soul, and spirit stuff. Okay, body, soul, and spirit. Well, then, all right, you say, well, okay, spirit is so nebulous. Okay, well, what's after spirit? Well, there is something, and this idea of this monadic attribution, that's kind of like from Wilhelm Leibniz, the monadology. But the idea is that this monad is part of this Vedantic septenary, which relates to the 7 rays. And the idea is you're going to have the first, you're going to have 3, and then you're going to have 4. And the idea here of this monadic position, that's part of plane 1, plane 2, and plane 3. And the monadic is plane 3. So that is the lower level of the septeneural, but it's the beginning of the divine triangle. So that this monadic represents the touch of the precipitation down into the physical matter. And so this monadic influence has a lot to do with a soul direction within one's life.
I love that. Thank you so much for the clarification.
It seems like just the two of you know what this is all about, because I'm getting a little lost. Could you just maybe
I made a printout of it, but maybe he wouldn't mind sharing.
No, I wouldn't mind at all.
Share with all of us what you said with Lauren, so we can follow up.
Okay.
It was, I wouldn't bother with this, Radlina, except it was so enlightening for me. He shared this last evening, and it sort of shifted how I was going to even talk about myself so I thought.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Fair enough. It's just let's try to understand it.
It's like what you have on the screen, just another chart.
Okay, Stephen, do you wanna? Oh, let me stop sharing my screen so you can share yours.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have it handy, I hope you do.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Now let me see. Sharing my screen.
Yeah.
How do I share my screen?
You just press at the bottom where the
At
controls
the very
are.
bottom, touch the bottom of your square and it'll give you mute, stop video, participants chat, and share screen.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Otherwise, it's hidden.
Okay. All right, all right. So let me do the shared screen first. Oh God.
Here we go.
I have too many tabs open. I can't do it. Let me do this. Let me do
Oh,
this. Let
you
me
did
do
it,
this.
Stephen. We're there. We see your screen. You just need to
Yeah,
open.
yeah, but what you're not seeing is I screwed it up.
Oh, it should be.
Oh,
There
here
it
we
is.
are.
Just close me off. Just close me off. You don't want to be.
Ah, now I see what this is. Okay.
Yeah,
Let
that's
me-
what I wanted people to see, and I feel it's a real addition to our discussion today.
Oh, I can't erase it. Well, okay.
What do you need to erase?
got it.
Everything's fine.
I've got to get back.
No, everything's fine, Stephen. We see exactly the table that Lauren is
Yeah, yeah, but what I'd like to do, see, if I can capture it, I can put it into the conversation, and then everyone can pick it up. But
Oh, you
I've
can
now
do
I've got to.
that. You
All
can
right,
do that
my
later.
screen is shared. Okay, stop sharing. Okay, there it is. Okay, fine. Okay, now let me go back and do something easier here.
What do you want to do? You want? I
We
think.
saw it, Stephen. We had it perfectly.
What I'm going to see is in the chat box. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a file transfer to the chat
No,
box.
don't do that now because you can transfer the file to us later. We won't be able to everybody open it at the same time, separately.
No,
Okay.
putting it the way you had it for people who like to watch this afterwards, it'll be there for all of us.
Well, that was what I thought. If I shared the file, is that okay? Get shared the file.
You can share the file with us if you want later when you finish talking about it. But now, why
Okay.
don't you share your screen so we can see everything as you speak?
Well, when I put shared the screen, see, I have multiple tabs open, so you're seeing all these tabs and not what I had.
No,
Yeah,
no, you did it great.
Saw just the table. I saw just the table and to the.
Okay, there. All right, all right. So now I'm sharing the screen that has just the table. Okay. Now, what I did, now I added these slash lines for the exoteric, including these
We can't see it.
new
Steve.
discoveries, the Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto being attributed
with
to
us
these
yet,
other signs.
Stephen, you haven't shared yet. Yeah, did you share?
Madeline, I
Oh.
think you can open the document once Stephen
Okay,
shares,
okay, okay, okay. All right.
you can open the document and share it.
Okay, okay. Share. Okay, fine.
You had it perfectly.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, okay. Here,
Here we
Yeah.
are.
there. Okay.
Perfect.
All right. All right. Very good. Very good. Now this is just a grid square. I just designed myself by reviewing the literature and just putting them into the places, and I just kind of made it up for myself.
And I
Now,
think it's very
after a while, I've got this thing kind of memorized, but when I was first doing it, I said, well, God, this is all confusing because they bounce around a bit. But like, for example, let me see, here's one here. Like going down to the esoteric planetary rulership of Sagittarius, said, well, Earth, well, that doesn't make any sense. How can the Earth be an esoteric rulership of a sign? But it has to do with the evolution of the consciousness itself, because we live on this particular planet. So the idea of this Sagittarius esoteric rulership being that of the Earth is all part of the manifestation, much the same way with this Gemini thing up at the top, being the monadic rulership of Gemini would be considered the Earth. But see, Gemini is part of the mutable cross. And the mutable cross has to do with the initial orientation of humanity on the spiritual ascension, going from the mutable cross to the fixed cross to the cardinal cross, which has to do again with the 4 points. And again, as far as our cultural mythology goes, it goes back to this mythology of Mithras, Attis, and the Christos, the Redeemer nailed to a tree, the crucifixion as a spiritual process of ascendancy. So in that particular regard, Gemini having the hierarchical rulership of the earth pertains to the idea of the evolution of planetary consciousness. And the point about this is that once an individual is focused on planetary consciousness, they have grown beyond personal consciousness, which is all the exoteric stuff. And it's the idea then of personal growth. So again, my feeling is that these are all birthday related in a particular regard, because as a person grows older, a person has a wider extension of awareness, which is supposed to be what Sagittarius means anyway. Oh, travel, see the world, learn other cultures. Well, we don't have to physically do that anymore. We can just, we can watch things on HGTV. But the idea of this general expansiveness of oneself, moving beyond individual consciousness, moving beyond soul consciousness, and moving now to a planetary consciousness itself, of which we are part in a manifested fulfillment of this planetary destiny, because the earth is considered one of the sacred planets. It's not like Venus, not like Saturn, not like Jupiter.
What tradition are you following in this? Could you recommend any reading for us? Because that seems to be something that I imagine most people here probably won't be familiar with. It's all very interesting. And I would like to explore more, but could you say where you're reading so we can look?
Say again?
Could you recommend any books for us, Stephen, related to this?
There's a lot. You know, when I did just a typical exercise before we met, I said, okay, let me just do the Google. You know, and all you got to do is you put in either esoteric astrology and a Google search, or you put in 7 rays as a Google search. And again, the humility will be one of those OMG experiences. Look at all this stuff, and I didn't even know it was there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, what I would recommend initially is Alan Oken's Soul-Centered Astrology. Who has Alan Oken's Soul-Centered Astrology?
I have it, and I tried to.
All right. Well, you know, this esoteric astrology stuff, basically he's condensed a lot of the literature into one volume. Now, see, Dane Rudhyar was politically apprehensive because it wasn't the time for that stuff to come out. Now, Carl Jung liked astrology, but he knew it couldn't come out. Roberto Siglioli, though, was involved in the same Bailey group. So Roberto Siglioli incorporated esoteric astrology in his whole psychoanalytic principles, which is now called psychosynthesis. And now Roberto Siglioli's psychology, as far as psychosynthesis, corresponds to this an esoteric application. Siglioli had hundreds of people's charts, and he would analyze them from a psychoanalytic point of view, but he would look at it from a spiritual point. And because Freud dismissed the idea of spirituality because he was embarrassed for his own religion.
Mm-hmm.
He had to secularize it.
Right. Well, this is kind of a high level, isn't it, of thinking?
Well, but no, that's the compliment to us. You know, here we are. We're working at it from an elevated plane. You know, so it's fair. All right. Let me take this stuff down. I'll stop sharing the screen, and we're back with you, dear. Okay. There.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Everything was
all right. You're very welcome.
I wanted to, what you just shared with this table resembles a little bit.
Say again.
Maybe not the same. But I just wanted to show you.
Okay.
This resembles what you just discussed. The one other way of looking at the rulerships, which Dane Rudhyar just obviously experimented with without saying this is it or this is a rule or something like that. It's just another logic. Let me see where this was. Okay, so no idea. Okay. Now this. You see how when we start with the sun, it a little bit corresponds to your table, I believe, this idea. So in the sequence of from the sun outwards towards Saturn, the way planets are ordered in the solar system, starting with Leo and then consecutively going with the signs. So Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, and so on, which gives Scorpio to Mars. And then when we get to Aries, naturally we need to choose Pluto here. And if you remember, if you were with us when we spoke about Pluto some weeks ago, I shared with you then why Aries and Pluto. There's a little bit more explanation about it. But if we think about this, we can see that after the, let's say, dissolvement of Pisces and Neptune, this rebirth concept could be connected with Aries as well. And then he's got question marks for Taurus and Gemini. And I noticed that you connected, I think, Gemini with Venus on the next level and with Earth on the last level. So maybe Earth could be filling in the gap here or something like that. And the moon is put into brackets because here he discusses, this comes from Astrology of Personality, the seminal work of Rudyard. So if you want, you can read there what he explains about this. But it's just another way of thinking about it.
Why do you think he has the moon in brackets?
Moon, exactly how Stephen said earlier, that the moon is different. It's not a planet, you know, even though we call it a planet. Yeah, the sun is also not, but it's a special body. And we maybe under that logic, we also cannot just that lightly assign it to something. And he's alluding to some more spiritual meaning of the moon there as a filter of everything else, rather
And
than.
if I understand the Vedic astrology that Gurav was showing us, the moon is very, very, very important in the Vedic astrology system, if not the most important. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know if he's on the call or not.
I think he's with us, but maybe without sound or something. I think he's just with one of his profiles today. I'm not sure. Gaurav, hello. Do you want to comment on all this? That was how you view rulership.
About the moon.
Yes, I'm very much here, Radhelina. Just
Hi.
give me a moment. I will elaborate over it in a while.
Okay.
I find the session very interesting today, and I have a lot of things up my mind. Just give me a moment to sort them out and present them.
Sure, no problem. Take your time. I just wanted to ask if you, want to keep it for several minutes, and then if you guys want, after Gaurav tells us what he has to share, we can switch to charts.
And while he's preparing, as far as the ascendant and the moon are very, very, the two most important if you took two from the Vedic astrology. I mean, not that I understood everything because it comes from him, but that the moon becomes so important. I think of what is the application in the whole, how do these things apply? That's what's so important to me.
Oh yeah, we need to look deeply into a chart and to know the person, discuss it with them, isn't it? To see how it really comes out.
Yeah. Like when we were talking about retrograde, you know, the question always became, how does that actually function? Rather than just taking the known application of it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the ascendant is special. It's interesting to look at it as what rules it, as it's always a factor, isn't it? But maybe the biggest factor is the actual planet. So say if you have, you Lauren, I think you had Aquarius ascendant, if I'm not mistaken. So if you look at where Saturn and so where Saturn is, for example, or Uranus in the chart, that would be the source of, I don't know.
Right.
Ideas.
Saturn's in Libra for me with that, and Uranus is in Cancer.
I've got your chart also prepared, so we can take a look properly in a minute if you want. I'm just waiting for Gaurav to,
I was just filling up the time.
Yes.
And why I brought him in, why I thought when we have moon in parentheses, he could speak to that, because all of us know how important the moon is. Dwayne would say the same thing, I think, moon being so important. The lunation cycles, we're all here for this. We're all in the same club.
Yeah, maybe we are so used to this similarity, this so obvious similarity between the moon and Cancer that we never question that. You know, all the others, maybe we can have different ideas, but if we question that rulership of the moon for a moment and say, okay, are we supposed to give the moon a rulership in the first place? Then that's where it can get interesting. But it's this pair, sun and moon. The sun, I don't believe that the moon should be separated from the sun, because the moon doesn't mean anything from the Earth perspective if we don't have the sun illuminating it from different angles all the time as we go through the month. And the cycle of the moon is not about the moon, it's about sun plus moon. And that's something that people very often forget. They think that the moon is doing something. Actually, the moon is lifeless without the sun, isn't it?
And Stephen had mentioned the moon being the veil of which the Pleiades and the other planets, the Ursa Major, and what else? There was a third one he mentioned that come through the moon. If you have
The Pleiades.
the
Pleiades
Pleiades.
and Sirius. Yes.
Thank you. I get things in general, but not always just.
So that's how it's pronounced, the Pleiades. To fill up the time, maybe I can brag about something with you guys. I received this little pendant today from a girl from France. She handmade, and it's depicting. It's very difficult to see, but it's depicting the most ancient depiction of the solar system that was archaeologically found. Have you heard about that? It's called the Nebra. The Nebra or Nebra. Yeah, Dwayne. Maybe I can show it to you on my. We can open it on Google while Gaurav is getting ready, so you can see what I'm talking about. So I'm really pleased with this because it's displaying the sun, the moon, and the Pleiades on the disc of it. The actual disc, the real thing, is much bigger, but I found out about this in a very beautiful sky atlas, which I bought. I'm trying to show you this, but it's a little slow. Could you see that?
Nice.
I really recommend that if you ever find it. But this is where I found out about this thing, and it was an archaeological, recent find, 1999, somewhere in Germany they found this, and it was dated back to the Bronze Age, so that's why this is made of bronze, the pendant, and it is a tablet dated back to 1600 BC. That's considered the most ancient depiction of the solar system, which is this actually. Sorry, my computer is very slow when it's on share screen. I'm trying to open one of those pictures for you, but it's called the Nebra Sky Disk. Ah, I'm sorry, it's just very, very slow.
Well, we see it. We see it.
Maybe I can go to. I'm just trying to make it bigger for you, but yeah, I think this is gonna work now. I don't know much about it. What do you know, Dwayne?
I'm like you, I don't know much about it, but the image of it just really intrigues me. I've, for many years now, when I refer to the sun-moon angle in a birth chart, I draw a little sun, a little moon, and then the little angle symbol. And it's so very resonant with this image. It's really that primordial. I mean, talk about first year. This is the basics, the basic of the basics, is what it evokes in my awareness. That fundamental polarity that that everything dances around.
Right. So what did I do? I opened the website or something instead. Sorry about that. So yeah, I was trying to show you the bigger picture of this because I think it's really a very interesting image of. Maybe now we're gonna be lucky. Here we are. So yeah, I thought this is really alluring image, isn't it? So the Pleiades are also part of it. And yeah, so far that's the oldest depiction of the sky we have.
So there's a lot more than just the Pleiades. Look how many, what, you see what is all the rest of it?
Oh, there are other stars, and I don't know a lot, but I think the Pleiades were recognized to be part of it. But the rest of the stars, I don't think they've got an explanation what they are. But this is supposed to be where they were. I mean, kind of the way the sky was at that time, 1600 BC. The way they saw it.
It's a smiley face, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a smiley face. Yeah, that's right.
Like
Yeah.
winking.
Winking, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And also they were
I
interpreting.
believe there's something astronomical. The little notches around the edge,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
notches in the little punch holes. Apparently, there's an astronomical alignment that somebody's worked out on all of that.
You're right, Dwayne. It says about this that they have meaning about where things were located to one another. It's almost like coordinates. That's what these were supposed to give. Let's see if I can find something about this here.
What does someone think? I know we're saying it's the smiley face, but we've got a distinct sun, we've got a distinct moon, but then there's an on the backside of the moon, there's a large figure, and then what we're looking at as the smile. What would those represent?
I don't think the smile was something that people that were interpreting this were actually really talking about, that whoever depicted it wanted to depict a smile. This is more what we see now that we talk about it.
I'm saying, but what astrologically could that be?
I was just trying to see what they say about these lines. You know, there is another one here. It's green, but it's probably because it just lost the color. You see that on the other side where the sun is, there is also the same line. And then the one at the bottom. So here, let's see what they thought about. Even more intriguing are the interpretations of the two curved golden bands, one of which is missing along the edges. These span 82 degrees. So here it is, what we're looking for. So these span 82 degrees, which matches the angle the sun is seen to travel along the horizon between the high midsummer sunset and the low midwinter sunset. Okay? In other words, the disk might well have been a functional device to mark the solstices precisely as they would have occurred in Libra, which would have been of significant use for agriculture. This is just what the book says. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, enough with that. Where are we, Gaurav?
Show your necklace, though. Can we get a close-up of your necklace?
Yeah, I'll try to
off.
show it to you. Yeah, and I'll send you, if you're interested, the details of the girl that makes them, because I think it's really well done and beautiful. So I'm not sure if you can see that. My camera is not really focusing well. Let me see.
Not really clear.
No, not so clear, but that's okay.
No, I'm sorry. It's pretty much the same. It's just totally bronze and yeah, pretty small though.
Very nice.
Thanks. I didn't expect it to arrive today, but it just came, and it's a very good surprise. Initially, I thought it was from Dwayne. a small little package with some esoteric writings on it came, and it was very, very I was like, sounded like it had traveled a long way. And yeah, Dwayne said he wanted to send me something. So I thought, okay, Dwayne has sent something here. I still imagine it's from you, Dwayne. That's how I remember.
Oh, no, it's going to be something else, something different.
Okay, I'll wait and see. Okay, go Ralph. Are you ready? Do you need more time? Do you want us to speak about some charts before, and then you can give us a sign when you're ready?
Yes, of course, Radhelina.
So what would you like? Is that your daughter in the background?
Sorry, come again?
Are we hearing your daughter in the background?
Yeah, she's in my lap. She's playing. So it'll take me a while to come back to you.
No problem. Take your time and just give me a sign when you're ready later on. In the meantime, we can start looking at
Yes,
charts.
I would like to get back to Lauren, where she was asking about the importance of the moon in regards to the whole order of the cosmics. So I would like to give it would be more of a talk about why moon is important.
Okay, no problem. Don't over prepare. It's just we wanted to hear your comments. But later on, and just give me a sign when you have acquired more.
Sure, it would be like more about 15-20 minutes.
No problem, no
or
problem.
so.
We've got so much more time, so we can start looking at charts now. And yeah, we'll get there, hopefully. So now I just wanted to ask you, let's keep it relatively short if you want, so that more people can share their experiences about their charts. This is very, very quick look at mine just to show you that I've got the ascendant in Taurus. I consider that the 23rd degree because it's the 0, and it's actually, when I check the Sabian symbols, I refer to that as 22 something. I've discovered that that's the most accurate just for my own case. But yeah, I would suggest look at the Sabian symbols as well for your ascendant and for the planet that's ruling the ascendant. And that can give us so much more, I think. So yeah, the way I understood what we need to do today was that just pointing out what's a planet. In this case, it's Venus in my chart. Venus is ruler of Taurus, even though I've got a lot of Libra energy going on as well, which makes Venus even more prominent. I've got my Venus in the 6th house in Scorpio, conjunct Pluto and conjunct the moon. So in fact, my Venus is the exact midpoint between Pluto and the moon, which I find is quite interesting. And at the same time, I use the subtone idea of Stephen Arroyo, which is look at where the planet is, and then, so for example, Mars, so Venus in Scorpio, where is Mars is the question in that case. So the position of Mars becomes the subtone of my Venus. So when I consider the strength of a planet by rulership, by dignitary, let's say, in a person's chart, I do that. Venus is with me, Scorpio plus Libra, because Mars is in Libra, and that makes them in mutual reception. So you see how very subtly, in a very subtle way, even though we can think that in this chart Venus rules, Taurus is very like a placid energy, very how can I say, whatever we expect from Taurus in the general terms, but actually there is a very strong Martian energy underneath that ascendant that won't be able to be noticed so easily if we jump straight at the sign, only the sign. So the ruling planet, Venus, has a Martian undertone. And maybe even more considering the conjunction with Pluto, which is also in Scorpio, and the moon, which is also in Scorpio. So we have many things leading back to Mars in my chart. As by subtone, all those energies lead back to Mars, and Mars is in Libra. And Libra is ruled by Venus again. So I consider that a full circle. Yeah, you see what I mean here.
Yeah.
And so I'll leave it here because I want you guys to show me your charts. And let's not over concentrate on mine, but do you have any questions about that? Or anything else? Okay, finally.
Unmute, okay. Yeah, I have a little comment because we were talking about the detriment of Mars in Libra. And with Mars, it's quite obvious, and because Mars is supposed to be then when we are assertive, it's Mars. When we say, it's me and I want this, it's Mars. And obviously Libra being the sign of relationship, you know, it's really a common place to say that when you are two, you have to make concessions and you can't just be all about you, but you've got to take the other into account. So you've got to,
Isn't that the way?
Mars, huh?
Isn't that the way that Mars in Libra gets what it wants? It's just the strategy is different. The strategy is through relationship, not directly go and say, I want this, give it to me. But it's a little bit more conniving. It may be more dangerous, isn't it? Because it's not that open. It wants to make you feel like you wanted to do that. It wants to make you feel like you agreed. And that, you know, it's a bit manipulative energy. I try to be aware of this.
It could be, but what you're saying is very Scorpio as well. But now I think of Mars in Libra, instead of saying I want, he got to say, what do we want?
Yeah.
It's all about the we, isn't it? I have this very bad habit, always speaking about we. You know, I go to a shop and I say, we want to buy, you know, and I was like, I'm together with my partner, but maybe he's somewhere in the background. Maybe he's outside even. He's not next to me, but still I say, we want something. So in this long relationship I have in my life, I'm very used to constantly saying we on everything.
But isn't that British? Because I remember when I was with a British friend, he used to always say, give us a hug. It was never give me a hug. Give us a hug.
Yeah, well, the United Kingdom has Libra ascendant, if that makes sense. And they have Saturn.
Say on the Mars, I like the idea of Mars and Libra being the diplomat. Also, that you have a diplomacy.
Yeah, the point is exactly, Lauren. But the point is that Mars is always Mars. Mars is always there to do a particular job. Now the thing is that in Libra, it does it that way. Through diplomacy, through harmonizing, through, you know, some sort of trying to balance things. It's just a different style. And this style may not be what we're used to thinking about when we say Mars, because we associate Mars with more direct, aggressive, demanding kind of spirit. But are we correct to think that way? Maybe that's exactly this thing about rulership is telling us that we are not correct to think that way. We should think of Mars as a function. And then this function can be played out through all the signs, through all the energies and all the strategies.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a very good thing.
Maybe
okay, but
yes,
but also, I just wanted to say that actually, Libra is the opposite of Aries, which means that Mars in Libra will also have the Aries qualities. And I was wondering if you somehow don't, because this is also a cardinal sign, so you will be pushing to receive what you want in a way, even trying to be more diplomatic. And I was wondering if you don't actually get something that you want, do you become pushy? Do you become like impatient? I mean, do you somehow manifest the Aries qualities when things get to a point that you realize you're not getting it the diplomatic way?
Yes, you're very right that this can lead to, Mars in Libra can lead to a lot of internalized Aries, if I understood you correctly. That's very much the case. And one of the major problems I see with this position is that my personal desires are not always conscious. So it's such a habit of working through the other, and we confuse our satisfaction with the common satisfaction in a situation. And when, let's say, things don't work out, usually it's about the partnerships in one way or another. Somebody else is not happy, or we're not able to win the right response that we imagined. We're always fighting for some sort of response, or some sort of a reaction, and balance. Really, there needs to be another side. And if it doesn't work, you're so right. Yeah, it leads to a lot of explosive, internalized energy that can be very, very powerful. But when it's in a particular element, Mars, this particular planet, it expresses itself through the element. So the explosiveness of Mars in Libra is through words. So it will be through the talking. I would say something harsh. I wouldn't hit anybody, if that makes sense. Yeah. But if it's in a fire sign, it may be throwing a very big tantrum, you know, and being really explosive and looking aggressive. Well, actually, after 5 minutes, it's almost like nothing happened. Yeah.
Yeah, being more physical.
Did I?
Yeah.
I don't know. We spoke maybe about this when we spoke about Mars and Aries, but I guess I shared the story of people around the table that we didn't know each other. We were about more than 10, definitely, people, and nobody knew astrology. I was like asked about it, and I said, okay, how do you express your aggression? This way, this way, this way, or this way. So 4 different ways of expressing aggression, which is through the elements. And everybody was meant to guess which one of the 4 categories they belonged to. And we wrote it down on a piece of paper. And then we checked the charts. And there was not even one incorrect answer by these people. So everybody had guessed their own Mars position by element. Yeah, so I thought that was a very interesting experiment for Mars. Okay, who wants to go next? Lauren?
Okay, sure.
Okay, I've got let me just open my folder with the charts. Here you are. This will be interesting because you've got 2 rulers of your ascendant, but you tell us about it.
Okay.
Just a few seconds for this to load. I'm sorry for the delay. That's it.
Here we go.
Hope you all
So my ascendant is in Aquarius, and I've always, oops.
Pressed the wrong button and I switched to another one. This is not yours.
Does Jennifer, okay.
No, I'm sorry.
Let me know
I
when
opened it, but I pressed something and it switched to somebody else's. I'll go back. Just give me a second. Here we are. So that's Laura's chart now on the screen.
Login, yeah.
There we go. Okay, so I have my ascendant in Aquarius, and I've always been told or thought it was ruled by Uranus. And let's see, Uranus is in the 5th house there, in Cancer. And anyway, I think of the way that there was this little quote I wanted to say. This was about, I also have the North Node in Aquarius. So I think that makes the Aquarian ascendant strong. But first, I'll do what you mentioned of the Aquarian Dane Ridger quote for that degree is, a man overcomes his passions and teaches deep wisdom from his experience. Or a woman overcomes her passions and teaches great wisdom from her experiences. So for that, I would bring in the Saturn rulership as well, because if you think of the passions, then and coming to understand through the experience and then you would use Saturn to help structure and restrict so that you have a better overall picture. I found this and I wanted to read it about. This is about the North Node in Aquarius, which I feel emphasizes my ascendant in Aquarius. It says, this life you came to dress it up, stand away from the crowd and don't do normal, be wild. Astrology is of interest. And then you have that South Node in Leo. You were bound by the Leo expectations, trying to be normal. So with that Leo on the other side of my ascendant, I feel like there's been that dialogue between being normal and trying to look normal to other people and trying to fit in, but somehow not in the inside feeling less normal, less like the other people, and in a way being more wild, being more free, and certainly have lived that life where I was a very structured and excellent student, and I was teacher's pet, and I was, I always got straight A's all the time. But at the other point of it, on the inside, when I graduated and switched from math to music from college to conservatory and did both, then I lived a very free and wild experience, you could say, and liberated myself when I lived in Ibiza, Spain, because then I returned to having no hard level cultural force on me like I had living in a very Jewish home, and all the straight A's and all the working hard. I became much more free to be, and I felt very liberated by that experience. So I relate to that not being normal, and when I'm with more unusual people, I feel more natural, and I always have felt very wild and I'm very structured, but I like to think of, I like freedom. I like to be not wild in the sense of crazy wild, but in free, very free. And so then that's sort of how I have looked at it, both the Saturn being that other ruler of overcoming the passions and teaching great wisdom now in a life, and then the Uranus being very liberated from the plane of the mundane, of what I considered mundane, and I just wanted to be as big as I could be. And then when I saw the chart of that came last night, I thought the esoteric is Jupiter, expansion, and I feel very expanded as a soul. And then the spiritual, the moon, I have to say that when I learned from Gaurav about my moon in that system, I felt it fit me very, very well, that it's that system, as well as the moon in Leo. I am very expressive and have been a musician all my life as well, getting on a stage and expressing to people, seeing people there, that the reason I had to calm myself and do the work is so that I could embrace them as like I'm the host of a party, and it's up to me to somehow lift everyone up. So there you go. That's sort of that's all I came up with for a short explanation of how the rulership affected me.
So do I understand you correctly that you see more relevance in Saturn than in Uranus?
No, I see the most in, I personally have always thought of it as Uranian. But I see the double. I see how Saturn, that I'm very, if I was just Uranian, I couldn't have also been like that straight A student, teacher's pet, trying to do good. and creating structure and discipline. So I see it, they both are equally powerful in my life.
Yes, that's the nature of the sign Aquarius, isn't it? It's not only rebellious, it's also very conservative if we think about it. So that sign gets from Saturn that conservatism and social, I don't know, social participation. Did you notice, guys, that Lawrence Uranus is unaspected? I thought that was very interesting. It's an unexpected, well, if we don't count that aspect to the MC, the yellow line connecting to the MC, but otherwise, if you look at the table down here and you follow the lines of, you know, where we've got Uranus, there are no aspects.
You know what's interesting is I'm looking at a chart right now. I remember that about Uranus, but I also am looking at a chart that was made, and in that chart, the Uranus is aspected over to Mercury in Pisces with a trine, and it's showing a sextile to Jupiter.
Okay, well, it's a bit distant for that.
Yeah, I'm just showing you that, and it also has a square to the Saturn and the Neptune and the Pars Fortuna and Libra.
So maybe the orbs were very wide in that calculation. I don't know.
Yes, and a square to the sun. So I mean, but I remember looking at it and thinking it was unaspected. But then in this chart, it was showing all the aspects to it. But yes, I think that's how would you interpret that? That it was harder for me to be free.
No, not necessarily. I think this actually makes Uranus a very prominent planet. I consider planets that are not aspected as something that is really able to act independently. Almost like nothing touches it, nothing bothers it. And the moment you connect with it, you find, because usually it's not very obvious to the person, you know how Liz Green says that these unaspected planets are like people living in your basement and you don't know that there is somebody there, but they live next to you all the time. So that's the effect of it. But when you realize there is something there, it becomes a very pure force. So I see Uranus as a very purely expressed one potentially. But if we follow the subtones, then it gets even more interesting to me because it's in Cancer. That's the only with, yeah, you've got Mercury in, okay, so it's in Cancer, leading back to the moon, and the moon is entangled with the nodal axis because the moon is conjunct the south node, and then it's in the opposite sign of Aquarius. So it's the whole Aquarius Leo axis we're playing with here, I believe.
Yes, that's what I felt to read that part about. It resonated that I came to the life to dress it up, stand away from the crowd, don't do normal, be wild. Astrology is of interest, but having the South Node in Leo, you're bound by the Leo expectations, trying to be normal. And I would have to say, because I had such traditional parents, it was really hard to be I tried so hard to be normal. And when I moved back from this free life in Ibiza, there was no civilization rule, and everybody was from every country. And I was a music teacher. I walked over a mountain to get to you know, and had a little mobilette where I had my guitar on the back, and it was like this huge liberation. And I always told myself, if I came back to civilization in the United States, I would never live quite in the center of it and ever be so full of the restrictions of society again. And when I moved back to the suburbs, I used to feel if people only knew how wild and free I really am, they would shun me.
And the music you played, was it something experimental or different?
It was different in the sense that it was medieval music from Spain and England. And that's what and from when the Jews, Arabs, and Christians all lived together. And I wanted to bring that forward since it wasn't something I was brought up with. So when I came back, that's what I did. So in a sense, and my Tree of Life CD, every album I've done, which are 9 of them, they're all kind of unusual to the regular. I never was involved in pop music or popular music. And I did do some free, like with a very horizontal keyboard, horizontal in feeling, in the stretch of it. And then I sang very freely on top of it. And we made spontaneous concerts without the written music, but both of us were classical musicians, so we could do that. So that was, I've done a range, but nothing has been, on the charts. Well, actually it was on the charts of Billboard for a period of time, my Wings of Time, which came into the classical realm. But yes, so the answer is I've never done the main thing in music. I wanted to always do this Aries Sun. What has not yet been done? What could I contribute in this lifetime?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, and you've got Uranus in Cancer, so it relates with the roots.
Yes.
Mm.
It's in the 5th house, which is related to creativity and to expression. It actually is mutually supportive with the moon, because the moon is, I always imagine the South Node situation with this Pluto and the moon. It's like you were a performer before. I feel like you were not a performer for the first time in this life.
No, I remember not being a performer for the first time.
But this is maybe what happened last time, that you were actually shunned because Pluto is conjunct the South Node and in the 6th house. So maybe last time around things were not that possible to express because there was more opposition, or there was more constriction. While this time around, this ascendant and North Node is saying, go for it. Don't be scared to, express with everyone.
And I remember I used to get migraines from my fear. It wasn't the easy path was to be intellectual and be a mathematician. The harder part was to do my music in expressing in front of a crowd. Also, when I left the United States, I didn't tell my parents what I was. It was the first time I lied to my parents. I didn't lie outright. I lied by omission, if you know what I mean. I didn't tell them really all the story of why I was going. And then I was cut off from my mother for 3 years or so because I was living in Spain, and Spain had treated the Jews so terribly in the Inquisition. It was like it was a big rebellious thing to do, having been the perfect good child that they brought me up, and I showed myself to be for that period of time. But the real inside part of me wanted to be much freer. And I did it, no matter, I have had so much part of my life that just is compelled to do certain things no matter what.
Lauren, do you feel like this period now, like recently, has been a period of revisiting family stuff and this initial story and everything? I'm just looking at that progress moon right on your Chiron. Chiron is in the 12th house in Capricorn. So everything that you were just talking about just resonates so much, I think, with this current moon of yours. The current moon, the progress moon it's just entered the 12th house. Is it this month or really this recently? And conjoining Chiron. So
interesting. I hadn't noticed that. Thank you.
It may be.
I feel like I've been in. This is the first time I have even exposed how interested I am in astrology, because I've been doing it since my Saturn return when I was 28. But until COVID happened here and all my concerts and all my things were shut down, that I realized I don't want to go on unemployment and be dependent on receipt. And I took off doing astrology professionally, and it hasn't stopped. It just keeps getting stronger and stronger. But I never thought of myself as doing this. as a profession.
Now the progress sun is crossing the IC in Gemini. I think that's very much to do with the professional new start. How often do we have a progressed sun crossing an angle? Not very often. Once or twice a lifetime. So it's a big moment for you.
Okay.
Down here. It crossed it last year actually, but still.
And when did it cross it last year? Oh, you're saying in general.
It must have been last year, because you see the progress sun is in 10 degrees something of Gemini at the moment, while your IC is almost the 10th degree, so now 8:44. So it was a year and several months when it was exactly there, exactly crossing. Gabriela is saying Chiron also transited her sun last year. That's right, yeah. Because Chiron is in Aries now, yeah. And it's in the beginning of Aries. This is showing us transits and progressions, but if we show just transits, Chiron will pop up as well. Actually it's here. Chiron is here.
Yeah, and we have a full moon conjunct Chiron today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yes, so the full moon is on your sun at the moment. That's what it turns out, right?
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's 8 degrees, the full moon.
Almost.
Okay, 8 degrees, and I think my sun is at, well, yes, close.
Oh.
It's 4:26. Well, anyway, yes, my life doesn't look anything like it used to. Also, my website for all my music they stopped being in existence. Host Baby shut down totally. CD Baby retail store. So I'm having to rebuild my website completely new, and I'm doing music and astrology. So I'm doing both now.
Perfect.
I feel like I'm out of the closet.
Would you like to share your music with us? Type your page on the maybe you've done it before, but we've got new people today, and now that we're talking about it, maybe we can.
I don't even know if it's all up there at the moment, because it's so much in construction. I'm working with a website designer, and just all day I'm putting tracks on. But I could send this group. How can I send this group some examples of my music?
I think you can attach a file in the chat box if you want.
I'd love to do that.
Yeah, yes, well, we are still in the discussion.
Well, we'll start together. I'll put an example of this, an example of that.
And why not making a post in the Facebook group?
Also, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the 6th.
No, this psychological astrology students and friends group. I think you.
Oh, yes.
Or maybe Jean-Marc's group. Why don't you post in Jean-Marc's group, because it's so much bigger, and I think everybody's there anyway.
Okay.
And
I'd love to put a sample or two, because I just have now converted everything from a form that didn't work, M4A, and now it's MP3, so it's easy for transferring. I've had to do a lot of things in computers. That's the other thing, Aquarius.
Oh, Aquarius.
You know,
yes.
Aquarian is, I don't love computer work because it's very tedious, and I don't love the tedious, but at the same time, it makes things work, and that's what you need to do.
Right.
And look, we get to all meet because of computers.
Yeah, we have to be on the Aquarian wavelength.
Yeah.
And to learn how to live in the Aquarian age if we want to survive in the future.
Yeah, I felt like I was Rip Van Winkle when I left Ibiza. I lived without electricity, running water, plumbing, any of that. I lived very isolated in a valley of a mountain range. And then I came home back to the United States, and everybody started to have computers. And so I did work in computers for a year or two, and I prayed not to die, because I didn't, it just felt like a social game. It didn't feel vital to my life.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Shall we move on? Who wants to?
Yes, yes, move on. I didn't want to take up too much time. I just wanted to talk about how it affected me thinking about the Uranus and the Saturn. And then when Stephen added the Jupiter for the esoteric and the moon for the hierarchical or the seventh ray, I thought, wow, that's really fun.
I would explore that table of Stephen because it seems like development over time. So how much more we can reach to if we want to explore it this way. So that's great. And your chart is a great example of this dual rulership of Saturn and Uranus of Aquarius. So yeah, thank you so much. Another example, which is different, like anybody of you that wants to share your chart but has a different ascendant, that's not Saturn, and but it's some other sign, so we see a different example. Don't be shy, come on.
Well, if nobody wants.
Don't pick yourself, I will pick you.
Yeah.
What about you, Jacqueline?
Me?
Yeah? I have your chart.
Did you say me?
Yes, I
Yeah.
did.
I have an Aquarius ascendant, the same as Lauren.
So
And I have Uranus in the 5th house, the same as Lauren.
Okay. No, I think I mixed you up with Beryl then. Beryl?
Oh, right. You have. Yeah, so maybe let Beryl. Well, I don't mind.
Well, we can see your chart as well, both of your charts. But I just remembered vaguely that Beryl had a Scorpio ascendant, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to share with us, Beryl?
Yes, I don't mind.
Okay.
I don't mind.
I have it here somewhere. So. I need to scroll a bit because there's so many today. So I can't. Here we are. I haven't really looked at your chart, so that's like a first time glance for me and for everyone else. So, what do we have here?
This isn't mine. Oh, yes, that's mine. Yeah, Scorpio rising. I can't really associate it with the Pluto, but if I do the Mars, which is the traditional ruler, it's in mutual reception with the Jupiter, and my closest aspect is Sun conjunct Jupiter, or Sun trine Jupiter. So I think maybe it's a Jupiter feel to it, because I've always felt really lucky, and I've always landed on my feet, and I've had quite an easy life, really.
And you've got that Jupiter connection, not just because it's in mutual reception, but also because the traditional ruler of Pisces is Jupiter.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, I think I've had quite an easy life. I can't really, the only way I can relate to the Pluto really is I didn't have a good connection with my mother. It was like a love-hate relationship. I've got Moon, Venus opposite Pluto. But really, I think I would associate more with the Mars and Jupiter.
Your chart is so Jupiterian. You also have the South Node in Sagittarius.
Yes.
It's a very Jupiterian chart.
And also, I've been really lucky throughout my life, and I think actually it's been really easy. So I feel quite lucky.
In what way was it easy?
Well, I haven't really had to work too hard for anything. I've had jobs and they've said I've never really realised my potential because I'm just satisfied with what I've got, you know.
That's what I was about.
I've never really had. If I've wanted something, I've had it. I was married to my husband. I got married when I was 20, and we were married almost 50 years. So. And he was really good. He gave me everything I wanted. I was lucky really because he was a Cancer, Sun Cancer. I've got 2 daughters and we were like his whole life. So I've been a bit spoilt all my life, I think, really. So.
Well, that's interesting. I think maybe it's an attitude thing, more or less, because this Jupiterian energy, I struggle with my negativity all the time, for example, and trying to see the good things. Even when they're in abundance, the Scorpio nature is more likely to, to pick the negative and to concentrate on the negative. Well, I see the contrast with the Jupiterian nature, how it's the opposite. Even if not everything was perfect, you are more positive about the whole experience.
Yeah, I think I'm a glass half full, but I can see the Scorpio ascendant, because if anybody upsets me, they might as well be dead, because I would just cut them off completely. So Scorpio, fixed water ice, I can freeze them out, no problem.
How about the Dane Rudger Sabian symbol for it?
I don't know. I don't know about Sabian symbols.
Got that open so we can check that.
Okay.
And did you study?
Pardon?
Did you study?
Not as much as I would have liked, because my mother was of the type that when I got to 16, education was wasted on a woman. So yeah, so not really.
Well, that was really a problem, because your ascendant in Scorpio is squaring the moon and squaring Venus.
Yes, as I say, I had a problem with my mother.
And in that case, it should be squaring Pluto as well, isn't it? Because Pluto is
and the Pluto-Neptune is part of a yod.
So it wasn't that unproblematic, Beryl. You see how your attitude is so positive, but actually, I wouldn't say your life was probably that easy, like easy, really.
No, but I just went along with it. Also, don't forget, I've got a lot of Pisces stuff. I just really go with the flow. And my Mars in Pisces, I don't really like much aggro. So it's anything for an easy life for me.
What does aggro mean?
Aggravation.
Oh, okay.
It's British.
Thank you.
This is the degree of the ascendant. Oh, let's check one more time. I hope I'm not wrong, but...
Right.
14.
I thought it was either 15 or 14 of
It's
Scorpio.
14th degree of Scorpio. This is, I love that degree because that's the degree of my composite chart with my partner's sun. So our common sun is in that degree. We're both Scorpios. So it's a telephone lineman at work installing new connections. The need to establish new channels of communication. Here you are, establishing new channels of communication.
Yes. Oh yeah, I do talk a lot. I've got Mercury, Mars. I don't know when to stop once I get started. And I was like that at work. I was an auditor, a local authority, and my audits always took 3 times as long as anybody else's, because I did practically everything, because it just knew no boundaries.
Let's see it here also, because that one is a little bit more, not that philosophical as Roger, but the symbol implies the ability or the need to be able to connect in with people or situations, sometimes with tools and equipment, sometimes psychically. This shows networking, along with the desire to talk to people or bring them together and improve communications. If people have been experiencing failure in fully expressing their thoughts, ideas, or emotions, there is nothing to be achieved by just worrying about it, but rather do something to repair the lines of communication. Doing this can cause surprising new connections with people, linking up even from surprisingly isolated places. Sometimes expert advice and help must be called in. Okay, do you relate to any of this?
Probably, I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it. But I do talk to lots of people, and I do organise quite a lot of things. I haven't got a lot of earth in my chart, but I do quite a lot. I think probably I do more because there is no Earth there.
What kind of things do you organize?
Groups. I've always been in a group of some sort, and whenever I'm in a group, I always either book the speakers or I do the accounts. There's always something. Yeah.
Of some sort, but what kind of sort?
Well, astrology group.
Oh,
Astrology groups, wives groups.
Wives?
Yeah, a wife group. Where we live, it was like a community group. Nursery groups, when the children were growing up, I was always on something to do with the school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, don't we see how this is coming out?
Yes, that other people see you as the one to organize and be the one that does the connections of
Yes.
telephone. You put it together for groups of people.
Yes, probably.
In the world, and that's what you're good at.
So.
There is a T-square, I would say, between the ascendant and Pluto in the 9th against Moon, Venus in the 3rd. And you know this 3rd house, 9th house opposition makes sense a lot. And when we connect it with the ascendant becomes its expression. And here we see the symbol of the ascendant talks so much about 3rd house, 9th house dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And this probably is the most dynamic aspect in your whole chart, because that's the only like square opposition, squares and oppositions, and the T-square at the end of the day. So the ascendant is actually very active. You are easily identified as a community or leader of a, not the leader, but as you said, organizer of this sort of things. And the 3rd house is Aquarius. Aquarius is
and I probably could have done much. I did very well at work, but I could have probably had a much better career had I put my mind to it. But I actually don't like the responsibility. I shied away from the responsibility. I was quite happy to do the work rather than to be somebody giving out the work. Most times I worked on my own or with just 1 or 2 people.
It's interesting that the nodes are also quite unexpected. And the only aspect we can see is a trine to the south node by Saturn. So it's almost like this thing that you just mentioned about responsibility and getting too involved. Almost like looking for the easy way. And it seems like that was quite possible because there is no pressure on the nodes as well.
That's more than likely, because I worked when I worked, there were 3 of us in the audit section, and the guy who was my assistant, he had a chart very similar to mine. He was 3 months older than me, and he had lots of grand trines as well. And we both said that we didn't bother to do anything. We knew that if we wanted to do it, we could have done, but we couldn't be bothered. So I think it's true that what they say about grand trines, they do make you a little lazy.
But I would also say that in the things that you've said, it's really, success is not going the farthest or working the hardest or being the most successful as the top, but instead it's by giving yourself the permission to be who you are. And if you chose not to work the hardest, but just to have a more floating experience and being happy with your life, and that seems like a success in itself.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think I worked to live, not live to work.
There you go. Yeah.
You know,
so I just want to, not take away that there's some should of how a life what a life is or should be.
That's right.
But Beryl, you see this, well, you know it, of course, but the sun is exactly trine Jupiter.
Yes, I know. That's what I say. That is my closest aspect, Sun trine Jupiter.
Yeah.
And for how long have you been doing astrology?
Oh, nearly 30 years. Jackie and I, we met at an astrology group, probably 27 years, 28 years ago. and we've dabbled ever since.
Yeah, because you know, when I was asking you if you did study, it counts. It counts.
Oh right, yeah. Well, we did that. I'm always learning something. My husband was really good because I've done throughout my life all these different hobbies, and he supported whatever I did. Poor soul. I'm really quite selfish.
Sorry, I pressed something again and got to another chart, but I'll come back to it. Sorry.
Yeah, I was asking because asking about your ninth house actually, how we can identify this.
Yes. Yeah, I did studying after when I was older, when the children were older, because I got accountancy qualifications in order to be an auditor. But I did that later in life. I didn't learn to drive until quite later as well. I think I was 30 before I learned to drive, which is quite old. I think things happened for me after my first Saturn return, but I wasn't aware of astrology at that time. But when I look back, that's when things started to happen.
I see. Okay, well, thank you so much, Beryl.
You're welcome.
To get to know you a little bit through the chart. Yeah. That's great. I wanted to ask now Dwayne to share what you've got with us. I'm sure you've got something. That's why I wanted to leave some time for you, because I know there is something coming. Where is the, Dwayne, I'm sorry, I haven't got your chart ready, because I signed up at the last moment, but I've got it on my Astro, so I'll open it very quickly. Or do you have your own presentation?
What's that?
Do you have your own presentation with your chart and everything, or do you want me to open it?
I do have it included in my presentation.
Go for it then. I won't waste any time from my side then. So stop my share. Okay, your turn.
Great.
Cancer ascendant.
Oh, this is nice.
Yeah.
Oh.
So fire and water. I first came into awareness of astrology in 1972, and this was the very first book that took me into Rudyard's realm. And fortunately, I have a north node in Aries and a moon in Aries, and that aligned beautifully with his sun in Aries and all that he pioneered. So I've been on track with Rudyard right from the early days there in 72. And what happened for me shortly after reading this book was that I instinctively felt I wanted to create a journal so that I could really attune myself to the lunation cycle in a very conscious way. And so I developed a format, and phase by phase, ever since that time, I've been keeping a journal according to the lunation cycle. But there's been years where it got pretty thin over that time, but I do have a huge resource now of journals, all organized according to lunation cycle. And I attribute that all back to Rudyard and to his pioneering work. In 1973, so I'm 1 year into Rudyard, and out comes Astrological Mandala. And that just, for my young man, age 24 at that time, this was a whole new world of understanding that I was being exposed to through Rudyard. It was so far outside of my conventional upbringing and my schooling that it was like really entering a whole new world. Redlina, would you please read that?
Of course. Yeah, I just need to move my windows a little bit if you hold with me. They are preventing me to see. Okay. This is not a book for cursory reading, no more than is Richard Wilhelm's translation of the texts and commentaries of the I Ching. The material in it is to be used to serve as a catalyst to deepen thinking about individual experiences and their essential meaning. It is a book about meaning, and a life without meaning is hardly worth living. The worth of an individual indeed depends upon the meaning and the structural archetypal character with which he endows all his acts, and as well his feelings and his thoughts.
Thank you. So imagine me there as a 24-year-old, really questioning, you know, it's prior to my Saturn return, but I'm really questioning the values of the society that I'm growing up in and maturing in. And as I say, this book took me into this whole more expanded realm of symbolism and understanding. And it gave me images of wholeness to work with in my own individuation process. So when we look to my moon in Aries, Aries 19, once again, Redlina, please.
The magic carpets of Oriental imagery. He notes the use of creative imagination. A way of life refusing a hectic involvement in social competition and waste-producing overproduction allows for the development of unattached and transcendent understanding. The static floor carpet on which man's feet, symbols of understanding, rest, can become transformed into the means for great flights of imagination and superphysical perception. The period of rest from outwardly directed activity, bound to collective normality, presents the creative mind with the possibility of surveying in dreams the totality of the present-day social situation, thus to see whole. The fourth stage of the fourth fivefold sequence of symbols invokes the possibility of developing a new technique of perception, a strive transcending and unattached outlook upon everyday reality. I see you so much in this.
Yeah.
About the others.
Thank you. Well, you know, that whole thing of refusing involvement in the rituals of society that were completely valueless as far as I was concerned. You know, this archetypal imagery just really gave me something to work with in a sustained way. So I'm learning about, okay, I have this moon, it's in the 10th house, there's a public involved, there's a profession. It really supported my realization that, yeah, I was to be a pioneer. Aries is intercepted in my chart. And I think that explains why it took me until I was, you know, I had 16 years of formal education under my belt before I broke out of that whole belief structure. And once I did, it was a way to the imaginative races. It really, I love this image.
Mm.
And you know, I must say, I've allowed myself to express imaginatively. I know in the early days, I had to get past a barrier, which was all around lack of self-esteem, you know, worrying that whatever I created, people weren't going to acknowledge, and so on, until I got to the place of true empowerment, where it didn't matter to me what other people thought. I just needed to get down and get creative.
Dwayne, where's that image from? It's so beautiful.
You know, it's the flying carpet part with the fellow with the glow, or the lantern, is an image from, I think it's a Russian painter But it's been extracted from the painting and in added into this cosmic background. So I just went searching on the internet for magic carpet, and this is what came up. I thought it was so.
It's gorgeous.
Right on. Yeah.
Very Russian indeed.
Yes, very Russian.
Very Russian.
Now, when it comes to my ascendant, so again, there I am as a young man, and I'm trying to get a handle on what's this ascendant about, and so this particular symbol lands in my lap. A willful man is overshadowed by a descent of superior power. The response of spiritual forces to the integration of personality through positive willful endeavors, endowment. Well, you can imagine that as a 24, the ego gets inflated. Well, whoa, I'm meant to be this willful man overshadowed by a descent of superior power. I better get on with it. And so that imagery was always there in the background for me. Combining that with the moon in Aries, and as it turned out, I was sensitized to certainly to the use of the lunation cycle. My lunation cycle awareness kept me into a certain stream of consciousness. And when in 1976, the Hopi Indians from the American Southwest put out a call throughout the world, and this is prior to the internet, but they put out the call for an upcoming Earth healing ceremony, a healing ceremony for planet Earth that they would conduct from Vancouver. There was the United Nations Conference on Human Settlements that year in Vancouver, and they actually conducted the ceremony from Jericho Beach in Vancouver on the full moon of June of that year. Now, when I received that invitation, just because I was networking at the time through the mail, I took that invitation. I had never, this is me as a young man. I had never led a group of people anywhere, let alone up a mountain at night to witness the full moon. But I was shocked into activity. And the next thing I knew, I was speaking on radio. I was being interviewed about this upcoming event. And I networked it all through my family, through friends, any way that I could. I just felt this incredible surge of purpose within my being. And by the time of the actual ceremony, I had 18 other people joined me in climbing up Mount Yamnuska, which is west of Calgary, in the Rocky Mountains. And that was an incredible evening. Coordinated by Hopi Indians, they're very much attuned to the lunation cycle. This is an ongoing spiritual practice for them. And there we were. That was in 1976. I had an experience. The first ceremony actually occurred on the very leftmost peak of the mountain in the background of the black and white image there. So that was 1976. 1977, we had this group with me. But what I experienced in 1976 was so powerful that I made a commitment to conduct an annual ceremony of like character at the full moon of Gemini. And I carried that on from 1976 to 1995. I did an annual ceremony. So it became, it involved a lot of people over that time, including the CBC, Canada's broadcast radio, which recorded the ceremony in, I think it was 1993, and really honored it and proclaimed, it actually showed the ceremony on Christmas Eve of that year, went across Canada. So it was a as I said earlier, in the back of my mind was this notion that I'm called to leadership, and I just got to do it, and when I feel it. And I think that Cancer ascendant gives me the capacity to feel into events like this and actually, come to bring them about. Now, in 1986, after 13 years of lunation cycle journaling, I suddenly had a really powerful mystical experience. It was a full body initiation into the Mayan calendar grid called the Mayan Tzolk'in. So this is a whole other realm of symbology that I've been learning about ever since, moon cycle by moon cycle. So imagine each sector in this grid is one lunation cycle. And those lunation cycles are contained within an overarching structure, which is the Tzolk'in. And then there's a whole lot of symbolism. You can see at the bottom, there are 20 hieroglyphs. And the number notation, the dots and the bars, that's Mayan notation. So from 1 to 13, and then that's repeated 20 times. So this is a vast cosmology, which because of my lunation cycle work, was initiated or have been initiated into, and that continues to this day. This is how a lunar year looks according to the Mayan notation. So at the bottom left corner there, you see the single dot, and then the second moon in that series has the opposition aspect, and there's the trine, and so on. Well, this carries right up to 13 numbers. And the vibration of 13 is so different than the vibration of 1. So there's an ascent up to the 7th moon, and then a descent back down, and then a repeat. So at the very bottom is part of my website, which actually tracks the same journey and consolidates web assets according to moon cycle. So each of the little moons with a thunderbolt on it has attached to it assets that are specific to that lunation cycle. So it might be a YouTube video, or it's a document that came out that was significant at the time, and so on. So that's been my creative project based around this work. I found it very interesting. At the time I put this image together, you see in the upper left-hand corner, there was a crop circle emerged that has 13 circles of increasing magnitude. And that was a really powerful signal to me at the time. It just kind of a confirmation that I was onto something special, and that I should just keep with it.
Wayne, could you remind us about the symbol of the ascendant? Was it talking about a higher power connecting?
The willful man overshadowed by a descent of superior power. Well, that descent, when I think of March 3rd, 1986, there was a descent, an incredible, I mean, it was just a full-bodied, from the top down, opening into this realm, into this hieroglyphic realm. And I've learned, and since then I've had other moments of insight that have been very powerful, but it's never been like it was on that particular date. Now I've, over the years, realized that the lunation cycle that we're using as a unit, as a cycle, 260 of those cycles constitutes or takes 21 years. Well, 21 years is exactly 1/4 of a year orbit of Uranus. So what we have here is a very interesting relationship between lunation cycle and orbit of Uranus. Now, I've been researching this for years and years, and I've never come across any other research that supports this. Like, there's no historical reference that I can go to where this has been tracked before. So this brings in that whole Aries energy of I'm pioneering something here. It's a new insight, and it's up to me, because I have the insight, to bring it into manifestation. So that's been my creative output, is to, to give image to this. For example, this image here is called Muluk, and if you see where it says Muluk there with the hieroglyph, this is the moon cycle that we're in now, and that the image to the right with the two hands, this is a painting that my wife Teresa and I did to represent this particular hieroglyph. This was our creative exploration, and embedded in it is the lunation cycle. So that the new moon would be at the top of the the square, and then first quarter, full moon at the bottom, and last quarter. So this, to me, is an image of this this journey that I've been on all these years, the lightning path. Lightning being an attribute of Uranus. So I've used that to just kind of refer to this particular orientation to life. So if you want to check out more, my website, lightningpath.net, has as much of the story as I've been able to put together. Except that in addition, I've and I'll put the link up so you can check it out if you like. I spent all of the Uranus's transit of my 6th house, 2 years, I devoted to a retrospective look at my life from age 21 up to the present. Because at age 21, I also had a really powerful mystical experience. So I'll put that link in the notes. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much, Dwayne. I was wondering about the next coming up 84-year stage of the Uranus cycle. I hope we're still here so you can tell us how that goes. How many more years until then? Haven't done my math.
Yeah, I mean, I'm dozy right in this moment. Somebody else got it figured out.
How many years do you have until you get 84? 84.
Oh, well, I'm 71, so we're, what, 13 years?
13 years.
Good old 13.
Oh, the number 13 popped up again, you see?
Yeah. The Maya call 13 universal movement. So in this moon cycle that we're in right now, universal movement is a theme. And there's so much going on worldwide. I mean, it's an unbelievable transition. The thing that I'm looking forward to is that out of this, we're going to move into a whole new 13 moon temple. And it's the Temple of Grace. So got my fingers crossed that great good can come out of all of what's transpiring at the moment. As dark as it looks out there, there are points of scattered light. And for me, this group is one of those places. I love it here.
You are creating a lot of the energy of the group by being part of it. So yes, it wouldn't be the same if you're not. Yeah, it's a very big influx of Uranian, Aquarian energy.
Well, thank you for opening the door to that. It's really, it's wonderful.
That was my Aries part of the story. The Aries North Node just opened the door, and then the Moon in Aries, the Sun in Aries of Lauren, for example, and many, many other things entered. Okay, I'm sorry, I got a little distracted because I was so immersed into your presentation, Dwayne, this time around that I just lost my my rational, like what comes next thinking. But
is Gaurav still here? He was going to do his little presentation, but I don't think he's here now.
I don't think he's here anymore. Yeah, and maybe we don't even have time, Lauren, because it's
We're
almost.
at the end.
Yes, we're towards it. But let's ask this question next time. Why don't we? It's not just about rulerships, it's about the moon in general. I think he was maybe a little bit under pressure today with the children. So
Yes, he had a child. And I just want to say, Dwayne, it's so interesting. I worked at, I'm Sky Medicine Horse. So I had all my training as it was called the 13 Moon School. And in just the synchronicities of it all, 13 Moon School. And in that, I also was training in Pleiadian light work. I also have as two of my Bibles, the I Ching and the book, of course, that you have.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
like so many pieces of the story I feel so similar to. So
Absolutely.
there's a great synchronicity here.
Yeah, I've been aware of that for sure.
Yeah. And the Mayan. I sang in all the Mayan temples and studied and was so involved in the Mayan calendar. So there's something happening here with the synchronicities of adding that to our astrological six seed of Radilena and astrological buzz. I mean, I think I love this group. I love the people in it. I'm glad for all the new people and the people who come week by week. We're a rich group.
yes, and it's getting better and better, I feel, over time, isn't it? As we know each other better and we explore topics, things accumulate. So it's great. I love it.
And the world is as crazy as could possibly be at the current time.
Yeah. Well, I personally feel like the best of ever. I don't know if you say anything like that, but it seems like a lot of us here are at the stage of, for different reasons, for different transits or stages of their life or whatever, of kind of coming into something new, coming into something of an expansion in one way or another.
And I loved Beryl's presentation, the way that she talked about herself. It was so, like you said, her attitude created her reality, creates her reality. She's had a fortunate life because she also sees it as a fortunate life. I have come across people who could have had her life and only dwelled in the parts that have been difficult.
Yes, I want it more and more when they have, always being unsatisfied with what they've got or whatever. So yeah, this is an inspiration burial, by the way, at least for me, because it's a good example of how you can change your circumstances to changing your attitude. Well, I need to change my attitude. You already have it like intrinsically, but I just wanted to also read here in the chat box, Cindy is telling us that her partner, his attention was grabbed by your presentation, Dwayne, because he is a native medicine man from the Arctic. Is that right, Cindy? I hope you can hear us. You don't need to speak on the mic, don't worry. But she thanks you for the presentation. It was very interesting for her.
Oh, most welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's you were mentioning also about the PDF that you shared recently or in the beginning, but it's a good time to share again, actually, if you want.
Just posted it.
Just did that. Okay, great.
And as I indicated, it's 400 pages, so it takes a while to download.
It's a PDF file, so it's pretty easy to handle. No problem. But it's a book that I believe needs to be properly published. So,
is this from Cindy or is this from Dwayne?
This is from Dwayne.
Okay.
It's a work in progress. So, every week I've got more to add to it based on doing these little presentations with you guys. So
you're adding the presentation material to the book all the time?
Well, I haven't buckled down to do that yet, but I can see that that's there for me to do. So that'll be, it'll be winter here eventually. I'll tunnel in, get to work.
Great.
Meanwhile, just keeping up with this week-to-week engagement is Yeah,
What's
it takes
our
work.
topic for next week, Radalina?
I was just gonna ask. I've got a few things in mind, but you tell me first. Any idea?
I don't have an idea.
So I was very inspired recently about the part of fortune. I don't know if you want to do
Yes.
about the part of fortune at some point. And I was reading Michael Schumann's book about that, which was a revelation. He's much in line with Rudyard, but he really goes into detail in his book. Like he goes more specific. Rudyard just lays it out as a theory, basically, but doesn't really comment on the specific. Just very, very little bit. Well, my Martin Schumann is presenting it in such a good way that I think, and very concisely. Well, I thought I wanted to share that with you at some point. So, or the other option is we can have just a general discussion because, we said we can do that once a month. I think we had 3 consecutive topics, so if you want, we can do that. But it's not necessary to follow that sequence. We can do it the following week. But just every now and then, if you want, we can just open it for anything to be discussed. And then we can choose topics as well. What else? Retrogrades is a good topic. We touched on this today. It kind of emerged from today's conversation. So I can explore that side of things as well more and show you something about that.
And I think Gaurav was going to be back with us in 20 minutes and then we got lost time-wise and didn't invite him back in. So he was preparing something, right? I don't know.
No, he just wanted to answer your question. He just wanted to answer your question. I think that's what he's anxious about. Yeah, but otherwise, no, he hadn't told me about any preparation for today. At least I didn't get it. But no problem. I mean, we can use those open sessions for whatever else you guys may want to share or ask or whatever. I don't know what
I'd like to do the part of fortune.
Mm-hmm.
I read I think on Astrological Buzz, you had quoted something about it, and I remember liking it or being fascinated by what it was a little square where you wrote it.
Yeah, I collect quotes like that. So when I read my books, when I like something, I go to a specific software I subscribe to, and I create little astrology quotes from books.
Okay.
This was, because I was reading this book about it, and so many things emerged from there for me, really clarified what I thought. I did a talk on the part of fortune some months ago, a year ago, maybe more, in Valencia, but I have to admit I didn't understand it that well at the time. So now with this book, it's really opened a new perspective for me.
I'd love to do that next week. I'm just saying I always speak up, don't I? It's just how I am.
Thank you.
I'm with you on that. I think it's part of fortune is very interesting.
Let's do it.
It's this combination between sun, moon, and ascendant, so we can really see what these 3 are about and how they are speaking together to the part of fortune.
Do you know how to do the calculation yourself?
It's very easy. It's extremely easy.
I mean, of course, you put it in astro.com and it comes out.
Yeah, but it's not exactly, because in Astro it's set in the default setting is in traditional astrology there was night formula and day formula. There is actually. So there were 2 possible positions of the part of fortune, 2 separate calculations. But I don't do that. I stick to one. For me, it's nothing to do with this. It's you pick your sun wherever it is in your chart and you move it counterclockwise to your ascendant, and you imagine that your moon is hooked to it, and as much as you've moved your sun, that much you move your moon, and wherever that moon lands, that's your part of fortune. Does it make sense?
Now I see how to do it. Yes, thank you for that instruction, because up to this point I've just let the astro.com do it for me.
Yeah, you see the concept of the part of fortune really becomes powerful, and we can really see what this is all about and how it could be fortunate when we see what's the logic behind the calculation, because then we see how we get almost like a new moon. We get a second moon in our chart. That's the part of fortune. Kind of, not exactly, but I'll explain more next time.
Okay, thank you. But that would allow me then this week to calculate based on that?
Yes, you just tick the box in Astro saying day formula.
Day formula, okay.
Formula for the part of fortune. And that's going to give you what I would come to if I am to calculate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
Bye, everybody.
Is everyone happy with this for next week? Great. Thank you for the support because that's fresh in my mind as a topic. Okay, and
thank you very much. That was good. Enjoyed it.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
Jacqueline,
I
everybody.
I would give you the word more next time because you haven't participated as much as I would like so far.
All right, put me on the spot, why don't you?
I don't know when, but at some point I'll put you on the spot.
You will, I know, you're after me, I can tell it.
Yes, my eye is on you.
Yeah, I know.
Radalina, where are you right now?
London. I'm going to be in London for a while, for maybe a couple of months. It's my working period now. So unfortunately, I cannot totally concentrate on astrology right now, but I'm trying. It's always there. It's always in the background for me. It never stops, but it's still, yeah, not like I normally would like it to be in Spain, but it is what it is.
Good. Okay,
everyone.
Be well, and we'll see you all next week.
See you next week.
See you next week.
Yeah, bye.
The 2 hands from the hieroglyph. 2 hands from the hieroglyph.
Thank you. Bye.